In the final round of the 2022 World Rapid Championship, Magnus Carlsen faced off against Iranian champion Parham Maghsoodloo. The fight for first place was close, but with a win in this game, Magnus would become the World Rapid Champion. Magnus started off this game with the move e4, black played c5 in response, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and knight c6. And this is the classical variation of the Sicilian, and Magnus plays the best and most common move, which is bishop g5, also known as the Richter-Rauser variation. Now, the Richter-Rauser is a very sharp line, so it makes perfect sense that Magnus would implement it in a must-win situation. e6 was played by black, queen d2, a6, castles long, bishop d7, and f3. Magnus could have also played the move f4, and this would be the main line, which normally goes one of two ways. The first way would be the most popular continuation, which would go b5, bishop takes f6, g takes f6. Note that black can't go queen takes f6 because of this nice trick with e5, d takes e5, and knight d takes b5, attacking the bishop on d7 and threatening knight c7 check, which would fork the king and the rook. So that's why black normally goes g takes f6 in this position, g takes f6, and here white goes king b1, queen b6, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, and f5. The line continues with b4, knight e2, and e5. Note that black should not take the pawn on e4, because after white plays f takes e6, and queen f4, this position is regarded as extremely dangerous for black, and it's not worth the extra pawn. So instead, black will play e5 in this position after knight e2, so e5, white plays knight g3 to defend the e4 pawn now, and black normally goes either h5 or queen c5, and we have a very dynamic and imbalanced position where white has chances to win, but black does as well. The second way this could go is all the way back here. Black could play the move bishop e7, and here the main line would go knight f3 and b5. After this, white plays bishop takes f6, g takes f6, king b1, queen b6, f5, and here black can actually castle long, and this would be also very exciting. In the game, however, white did not go f4, he played f3 instead, so f3 in this position, and here black played knight takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop e7, king b1, and b5. h4 was played by white, and here Parham played the move rook b8, which I thought was a slight inaccuracy. The move that I preferred instead was the move queen c7, and that's because if white continues the attack with something like g4, and black castles, this queen now adds an extra defense to the d6 pawn. I thought this was important because if white ever tries to go bishop takes f6, black can play bishop takes f6 in response, and here because the queen covers the d6 pawn, after white goes queen takes d6, you can probably enter this endgame as black, where you're down a pawn, but you have the two bishops, and although you're worse here, you definitely have chances to fight for equality. But instead, black did not play that, he played rook b8 instead, so all the way back here. White went g4, b4 was played, knight e2, and a5. Magnus played knight g3, transferring the knight to the king side, where it will help participate in the attack. Queen c7 was played, and bishop e3. This maneuver of moving the bishop from g5 back to e3 in these positions is very common because you want to clear the path for this g pawn to move to g5 and attack the black knight. Here, black played rook c8, and Magnus responded by going rook h2. So I should mention that rook c8 attacks the pawn on c2, and that's why rook h2 was played to defend it. However, there was a better move. The better move is actually bishop a6, which sacrifices the pawn. The point is that after bishop a6, you're hitting the rook, and black can take on c2 with queen takes c2, but after king a1, this rook must move away, so rook a8 can be played, then white can play bishop d3, attacking the black queen, and after something like queen c6, white simply continues the attack with g5, and this could get extremely dangerous for black. You can't play knight g8 because the g7 pawn will be hanging, so you have to throw in e5, but white can go queen c4 here and enjoy a great position. For example, if queen takes c4, bishop takes c4, this knight still doesn't have many squares to go to, so after knight g8, white can already go knight f5, and if you trade on f5, e takes f5, white's got the two bishops, an attack on the d6 pawn, which is only defended by this very bad e7 bishop. Black's knight isn't developed and is completely boxed in, and white is doing excellently. However, bishop a6 was not played by Magnus, he played rook h2, which honestly seems like a more logical move, considering that you don't just want to gambit the c2 pawn at times, so rook h2 is played. And here, black made a mistake with the move d5. d5 opens up the bishop on e7, it also attacks the knight on g3, and it simply attacks the pawn on e4. However, white's response is extremely strong here. Magnus plays the move e5. e5 is a great move because it shuts down any counterplay that black was trying to get in the center, and it attacks the f6 knight, which currently doesn't have that many squares to go to. Parham takes advantage of the fact that he doesn't have to move the knight immediately, and he castles here. White can't take on f6 here because after e takes f6, black will go bishop takes f6, so attacking both your queen and your knight on g3, and the only way to defend both is by going queen f4. However, after e5, black has trapped white's queen, and this would definitely not be a line that Magnus wants to go down, so he did not take on f6. Instead, he played the move bishop a6, developing his bishop and attacking the rook on c8. Black played rook a8 in response, and Magnus simply retreated his bishop back to d3, where it will stare at the h7 square. Rook fc8 was played, so still taking advantage of the fact that you can't take on f6, because after bishop takes f6, queen f4, there's still this e5 trap. So instead, Magnus goes queen f4 in this position, and here knight e8 was played by Parham, and at this point it really becomes a race type scenario where white tries to push their pawns on the king side to open up black's king, and black will try to do the same thing on the queen side. White starts first with the move g5, and here black played bishop c5 in response. I thought bishop c5 was simply too slow. It doesn't make sense to me why black would want to waste one or two moves trading the dark squared bishops when white's already going to go h5 and g6. In my opinion, black should have tried to march the a and the b pawns down immediately. Bishop takes c5 was played, queen takes c5, and here Magnus goes h5. Bishop b5 was played by black. Again, I'm not really sure why he wanted to trade all these minor pieces on the queen side when Magnus is ready to go g6. However, Magnus didn't even have to go g6. Instead, he found the beginning to a winning attack with the move bishop takes h7. If black doesn't take the bishop, then he's just going to be down a pawn and still getting crushed with this massive attack, so it makes sense to grab as much material as he can. He plays the move king takes h7, and Magnus goes g6 check. If black moves the king back to either h8 or g8, white will just take on f7 with the g-pawn and then push their h-pawn down the board, where they will be getting checkmate very soon. So black chooses to play f takes g6, and here white finds a perfect move in queen f7. If he had played h takes g6 instead, after king takes g6, although black's king seems to be completely busted, there is no immediate mate. However, after queen f7, white is going to be checkmating in just a few moves. The point is that black's king is completely boxed in. You can't return back to g8, so h takes g6 checkmate is a massive threat. If you play g takes h5, then rook takes h5 will be checkmate, and if you do something like attack the white queen, h takes g6 will still be checkmate. So in this position, black played the move g5, and for a moment it looks like black might be holding things together, but after Magnus plays the very nice move h6, Parham resigned this game. H takes g7 is a massive threat because that would be checkmate, and there's really no way to stop it. If you attack white's queen, h takes g7 is played anyway. You can't go g6 because the pawn is pinned to the king, so literally no matter what black does, he's going to get mated in a few moves. So this is why Parham resigned, and after this resignation, Magnus won the game and became the 2022 World Rapid Champion. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.